I think I've told you about this before.
Okay.
But Slate has this series. It's called Future Tense. And it's like a series of sci-fi short stories.
Yeah.
So they're good, and I like reading them.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of the year, they do like a roundup of them, just like all the links. And I went through the other day and read them all. And I realized how fucking lib they are.
Slate lib, really?
Yeah, I mean, they have a very good human interest section, which is why I still read them. That's where I get all my advice columns from. They're good at that.
Okay.
But these were, like, half of them were just like, here's why this socialist program wouldn't work.
Oh.
Like, there was one on, like, UBI, but it's like, oh, no one can afford to live on basic. Like, that's what they would call their UBI.
Yeah.
And they had one on, what else was it? Oh, there was this one where, like, everything is verified by blockchain, which I don't even know how blockchain works, and nor do I want to know. Listeners, do not try to explain it to me. I will delete that.
It's just Bitcoin. That's
which
all.
I also don't understand, and it's fine. I don't need to.
Yeah. No one does.
But the idea was that, like, you couldn't lie because everything was verified online or something. I don't know. It was stupid. What else?
What? So they're just like, it's just a fact check society?
Basically, yeah.
That sounds obnoxious.
That sounds terrible. Oh, there was a reparations one. That one was really bad. They're like, we tried it, and then they all just moved away to nicer neighborhoods, and then we stopped. Like, okay.
That's the premise of the story?
That was the premise, is that they tried reparations, and everyone left because their landlords raised rent, and so they were just like, well, bye.
Well, that's just Ayn Rand. That's just the capital strike, right? It's just, they leave.
Yeah, it's all just like, here's why we can't have nice things, basically. And they always try to sprinkle in climate change in there, too. And it's just like, it's just a bummer.
It's kind of interesting, though, because we'll see basically that sort of pattern happen in the reading we're going to do today. Like, you try to do these things, and then international capital, or just the rich people, right? Mm-hmm. They screw you over.
Oh, for sure. That is a big theme.
It's also a chronicle of why can't we have nice things, except just, it's not saying like it's impossible, we shouldn't try or something, but it's just like, or these little changes won't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's obviously not what they're trying to say. They're
trying to say it's impractical.
Yeah.
I don't know. That kind of stuff, it's like, do you think you're the first person to come up with those reasons? Like, I don't know. Whatever. All right, let's get into what we're talking about today. What are we talking about?
We are going to be discussing the book Open Veins of Latin America, 5 Centuries of the Pillage of a Continent.
Okay.
As the subtitle implies, it's going to be an uplifting read.
Yeah, kind of a downer. Oh, it's a good book, though, man. Like, geez. We're going to get to our review of it, but yeah, spoiler, I liked it.
Yeah, I did too. Once I got rolling, like,
yeah,
I kind of bogged down at some point and was just, I would get too distracted researching stuff about it instead of just reading it, which is really how you should kind of approach this. If you are looking to read it yourself, it's not like a, dry, just the facts, ma'am sort of thing. Like, it's very emotional.
For
sure. Should be kind of taken in, like almost like swiftly, should be taken in as a coherent thing.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed, so they have a foreword here by Isabel Allende, who's like a very major voice in Latinx fiction. She basically invented magical realism.
Ah, okay.
She's a big deal. And she really sets up the tone of the book, which is that it's kind of poetic in a way, like it's a narrative and it has flow, and like you said, it's very emotional. It's very evocative. But it's also very straightforward, which I loved.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Written in 1973 by Eduardo Galeano. And it's interesting, a little side note here. He's in 2014, he was interviewed and basically said he didn't like his book anymore.
Really?
Yeah, he said he wasn't qualified to tackle the subject. He said it was badly written.
Oh.
And said, I didn't have the necessary training or preparation. I wouldn't be capable of reading this book again. I'd keel over. For me, this prose of the traditional left is extremely leaden, and my physique can't tolerate it.
Wow.
So
if
self-burn.
he thinks this is leaden, like, I don't know. I don't know what else he would do.
I mean, I think
Parts of it.
there are parts that get into statistics and not super dense, but they just cite a bunch of things kind of repeatedly. And so maybe that.
Yeah. And I we're going to get into this, but the last section is a little tough. I guess not the very last, but the one that gets into all the economics, you're like, whew, like that one gets a little meaty.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But I just thought that was interesting that he
Eduardo.
seemingly was just like, no, thanks.
Don't be so hard on yourself, Eduardo. I don't know. That thing about not qualified, I think, is interesting because I think that's why it was very good, because it was from this like novelist's point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just brings a different approach to it. I think that's a strength of one of my favorite biographies, that a multi-volume biography by Robert Caro of Lyndon B. Johnson. You know, he had done a biography previously to that about Robert Moses, this architect in New York, very famous, very influential on the city's like development. And his approach is that of a journalist. That's how he was trained. He was a journalist. And so he kind of does a lot of investigative digging and stuff. You'd think more so than like a historian who might approach it more like sweeping changes, or an economist or something. In this case, right? An economist would be more steeped in like neoliberal stuff. So yeah. I think being not qualified, like, you know, does add to it, I think.
I think so too. All right, let's get into this.
Let's jump in. All right. So we already covered the foreword. And we get to the introduction after that.
Yeah, I mean, this basically just sets up his thesis, as an introduction should do. So I've heard.
Yes.
But there's some really choice quotes in here that, like, I remember when I sat down to read this for the first time, I was just already circling shit. Like, yeah, I like it.
Yeah. What you got?
The first one that I've got is, it's right on fucking page 1, is the more freedom is extended to business, the more prisons have to be built for those who suffer from that business.
True. That is true. Whether they are actual confined prisons or open air slums that kind of serve as open air prisons.
For sure. Let's see. Another gem. The strength of the imperialist system as a whole rests on the necessary inequality of its parts, and the inequality assumes ever more dramatic dimensions. I mean, yeah, we've seen that happen.
And that's the book, too. That's what he's going to kind of lay out in case after case, is that this is happening. This is why the international system of capitalism is so strong, is because of the original pillage and the pillages that follow it. Everything builds on each other, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
From first contact, it just keeps building and rolling like a snowball.
Yeah, yeah. It's a vicious circle kind of thing.
Yeah. There was also this interesting thing he talks about in terms of concessions that he mentions and says, like, you know, Latin America, they're always giving these concessions to all these businesses to come here and like, oh, you don't have to pay taxes, you don't have to do this.
Oh, yeah.
And he gives this quote from Woodrow Wilson saying, "You hear of concessions to foreign capitalists in Latin America. You do not hear of concessions to foreign capitalists in the U.S. States that are obliged to grant concessions are in this condition that foreign interests are apt to dominate their domestic affairs."
Yeah. It's just a complete double standard, basically.
Yeah, and it puts, like he says, it puts you in a bad position. Like, it's definitely true on the world stage that this, you know, that's why you have like tax haven places and stuff. They're never like super rich on their own or something. It's just that they're desperately trying to get anything they can. And it kind of brought to mind for me, like what we see nowadays, even within the United States. You start to see it with cities and stuff begging corporations to put their headquarters somewhere and saying, oh, you know, please build your stadium here and you'll never have to pay taxes for like 30 years. And by that point, they're moving, dude. Like,
yeah, it's disgusting. Yeah. It's just the wholesale bargaining your people's lives away.
Whether out of desperation or just, you know, personal greed or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's because of the jobs though, right?
Right. Yeah. The job. We need this. This will help us grow.
Oh, God.
It sets up really, like you said, the strength of the imperialist system resting on the inequality. I think that therefore kind of the opposite is true. And he says this, that, you know, the opposite is true, that Latin America, its weakness or its poverty is because imperialist countries have robbed them, right? It's not they just are that way or something like that. It's, you know, they're poor because they've been systematically robbed first just as a physical, like by gunpoint robbery.
Yeah.
and then, through labor power, through not being paid for what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think it gets into this in detail, but like there's this misconception of like, oh, well, that's just like how that region is. And like, it's, maybe it's their environment, maybe whatever. Like, then there's lots of racist explanations too.
Yeah.
But the reality is that like, yeah, it didn't, the reason that they are doing badly now is because they had so many resources to begin with and people came and fucking stole them.
Yes. Yeah. That's a big theme too, is that the richness itself is kind of the cause of it because people said, hey, look at what they got.
Yoink.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah. He mentions like, this comes up later too, but the idea of convincing the poor that poverty is the result of the children they don't avoid having. So like there's these mass missions to sterilize people. And this is a thing that happens in history a lot.
Yeah. And it continues to happen.
Absolutely continues to happen. But apparently the U.S. would send people to sterilize people in Amazonia, which is the least populated habitable zone on the planet.
So it's like, making sure that we don't end up with too many people in Wyoming.
I mean, basically, all of Latin America has lower population density than Europe.
Wow. Yeah. He's going on about the population densities of those different countries. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, I wonder why. It's like, well, one, it's racism. They don't see these people as like deserving of like life and propagation. And two, it's so they can steal their shit. Like it's absolutely so they can like just clear the land and have it for themselves.
And yeah, exactly. That's the important thing is it's for them. You don't see this sort of thing. You never see this sort of thing turned on, you don't have sterilization drives aimed at the wealthy.
Nope. In fact, it's the opposite. You'll have like, we should have sperm like donors be from like the smart people or whatever, like weird eugenics shit. Yeah.
And this is a weird connection, but it kind of reminded me of our previous episode. You're our episode number person. Our previous episode on Snowpiercer.
30. Oh, I don't know the number of that one. I failed my one superpower.
Where there's this element of eco-fascism of like, there's not enough to go around. So we've got to control you people. We've got to make sure that you don't reproduce. Whereas in the front of the train, they're all fine and it's okay. It's they can eat sushi. It's okay. But here, it's, and in Latin America, you're seeing, they've got to go sterilize people because the problem's so bad. And you've got teeming hordes of poors, right? Versus, saying, actually, we'll let you like exist.
Yeah. Like, what if we helped the poor? Wow. What a concept.
Can't do that.
No.
Then there's not enough for us. Another thing he brings up in the introduction is kind of related to this population control thing is the absurdity of saying we're going to use capitalism to fix the problems that capitalism made.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
He has a quote saying, in lands that are empty, the system proposes to avoid births. In countries where capital is plentiful but wasted, it suggests that capital is lacking. It describes as aid the deforming orthopedics of loans and the draining of wealth that results from foreign investment. It calls upon big landowners to carry out agrarian reforms and upon the oligarchy to practice social justice.
Yeah.
That's just liberalism right there.
That is exactly what that is. The idea of like everything has to be like development focused instead of just like taking care of people focused.
Yeah. And maybe we should put forth more effort in putting it. We should put out like our own lists or do our own episodes where it's like, here's why stupid liberal idea A won't work.
I'd love that.
And do our own reverse slate.
Hell yeah. All right. Let's get going on part one. This title says it all here. Mankind's poverty is a consequence of the wealth of the land. I mean, yeah.
Yep. Well,
that's what happened.
Continue to see that is that, like we said, they've got a bunch of plentiful natural resources all over the place. And people come to take that for themselves.
Yeah. I mentioned this last episode, but when I read this book, it was like a fairly emotional experience for me. So listeners, Grady and I are both half Mexican. And we grew up hearing our mom, like one of the few times I'd ever heard her swear was like talking about the Spaniards.
Yeah.
And it was just this, it's an interesting narrative to have as like your background, because it's like, well, literally the definition of Mexican is like you are part Spanish and you are also part native, and like your ancestors killed each other basically.
Yes. Yeah. It's strange. And he'll get into this in this section talking about like Mexico City being, conquered and everything. And yeah, I remember that as well. Like when we were in Mexico, Mom talking about kind of how the Spaniards had destroyed the place and rebuilt it kind of vengefully, just like rebuilt specifically over temples and stuff, and kind of eradicating
absolutely
what had been there. It's still a very largely Catholic nation, still speaks Spanish mostly. It's like of the conquerors kind of, but you still know that like history was there.
Yeah, it's this very weird relationship. Yeah. But anyway, I mean, just reading this whole thing, it just kind of inflamed me, I guess. I feel like we should be way more mad about this genocide and talk about it every fucking day. Like, just the sheer, just fucking brutality is insane.
Yeah, it really is. And it's hard to, it's kind of a whiplash to when, while I'm reading this and then just going about in everyday life and society and just, what are people focused on and stuff. And she's like, this is just in the background. Like, yeah, this happened. It continues to happen. And we're just, okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
I do want to point out some numbers.
Okay.
So the ones that particularly stuck out to me were just the huge fucking population, just decimation. So pre-Columbian Mexico's population was estimated to be between 30 to 37.5 million people. And it took 4 centuries for Mexico to regain its pre-conquest population.
Man,
like,
that is...
What the fuck?
It's decimation. It's more than that. I mean, decimation would be you take out 1/10.
Yeah. Natives were 70 million strong. 150 years later after conquest, 3.5 million.
That is a lot of people killed. And, not directly all the time. Not in war necessarily. Disease did a lot of the work.
Disease, yeah.
But that's crazy.
Yeah. It's just horrible. And, he goes into several examples of horrible treatments, people dying in mines, people committing mass suicide to basically get out of it. And they would read an oath without a translator to the native people. The
requerimiento.
Okay.
The basic premise was, convert here or get enslaved. We will enslave you. We'll enslave everyone that you know.
Can you imagine? Just
I'd like to read it here. I'd like to insert into the record a little quote from an old book that this makes me think of, given the topic of the requerimiento is converting to Catholicism. This reminded me of this quote. Then Peter said to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7 times. Or,
Okay.
just give them one chance, half a chance, and just enslave them in their family.
Negative chance because they don't speak the language.
Yeah.
The whole conversion thing, what the heck? You're just going to somebody else's culture. They've lived their entire life one way and be like, no, you got to listen to me.
Yeah, and that's enough to damn them in your eyes if they don't. If they don't just drop everything and be like, you know what? Yeah, actually, you're right.
You got me.
Good presentation.
I literally don't know the words that are coming out of your mouth, but I agree.
That's the astounding.
Also
it's bad enough if it's just expecting in some door-to-door missionaries or something come by, expecting that to work. Very unlikely, but whatever. But yeah, if you don't even speak the same language, what? But it really wasn't about converting. Just like we see with the encomienda system, it's not about converting them or educating them in Catholicism or saving their souls. It's really about taking from them and having a justification for that.
Yeah. So he goes into a lot of examples of the justification. I think that's a lot of it too. Just being like, hey, we gave them a chance. We're trying to save their souls. There's a lot of this just kind of dancing around defining their humanity, and it's super gross. Yeah,
no, it's talking about the mines as a cure for the Indians' natural wickedness. Ugh. Wickedness is what the Mexican viceroy said. You had a bunch of philosophers being assholes saying these guys aren't really human or whatever.
This one guy, Abbe de Pa, I don't know how to say his name at all. but he like wrote all kinds of shit about them, like explaining like, oh, here's why they're not humans, blah, blah, blah. He never even went to the Americas, guys. He just made it up.
He was just like reading about it, I guess.
Yeah. Super weird. There's like some gross anti-Semitism in there too, being like, oh, they're similar to Jewish people in this way, so it's
in
cool.
that they're bad, yeah.
Yeah, basically. Ugh. Just horrible.
Yeah, no, and the justifications, these people who are exploited, they're bad, they're, responsible for it. This is good for them, actually. They're not really even human. I mean,
still happens.
Yeah, we continue to see this. It's still a thing, whether in terms of imperialism, looking at other countries, this happening in other countries, or our own poor here in the imperial heartland.
Yeah.
These sorts of justifications are still basically used. Another thing, this first chapter is covering, Spain's initial conquest, basically, and then subsequently Europe's initial conquest. And it describes just how, we're talking about how many people were wiped out and everything, how cruel this conquest was, how violent it was, and how they would go in and just like straight up murder the leaders of these empires and take all their shit. It's what Marx referred to as the primitive accumulation of capital, where they're first just violently seizing everything.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, they didn't get this because they were more qualified in some weird way. Like it's just because they were assholes. They fucking stole it.
They stole it at gunpoint. They robbed it. Yeah, you're right. They didn't just produce that much. They didn't work that much harder than everyone else. That's why they're rich. No, it's because somebody down the line took this, pillaged it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Spain.
Oh, Spain. So from what I understood in this, it sounded like Spain did this. It's because they owed money to other people, basically. So it wasn't all Spain.
Right, yeah.
I get to hate every European now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Because Spain, it talks about it being like the mouth, because it like initially tastes everything, but then just like sends it straight on to the rest of it, to their creditors. He says that Spain, most of the gold it was loading onto its ships and everything was already owed to somebody else.
Jesus.
Or the silver, especially. They were just spending it immediately. And none of it goes in Spain to, create industry or anything.
No.
It's not funding like, capitalist enterprises.
It's not giving people jobs.
Yeah, it's not doing anything like that. It was just looted and given to bankers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of their countries started to develop industrial bases based off of that. But it kind of discusses how this, leads to Spain slowly collapsing. And yeah, you're right. Latin America being an overall European business instead of just a Spanish one. So sure, yeah, Europe is responsible overall.
Great. I love having more people to blame. Oh, and the gold that they loaded up, like, definitely melted all the fucking beautiful art that they found. So that's great. Cool.
Yes. Yeah. No one knows what sort of wonderful creations were destroyed.
Yep. All gone for bankers.
And this metal that they take from the colonies there, he says the metals taken from the new colonial dominions not only stimulated Europe's economic development, one may say that they made it possible.
Absolutely. They wouldn't be shit without that.
Yeah.
I think we kind of learned this, like when we're taught like, basic world history in school, it is set up grossly as this good thing, like, oh, discovery. And it's like, no, this is not discovery. This is just stealing. And the boilerplate sort of way to put it is like opening up trade. Now we can trade with these new continents and new riches to be made. And it's just, you picture like they're just, going down to the market and, hey, I'll give you, I don't know, trading horses for... Yeah, furs or whatever.
Yeah, and it's actually not that at all. No, it's trading your life for all this stuff.
Yeah, it's horrifying. I mean, it's just, at the end of the day, like, capitalism requires there to be losers, and this is a perfect example.
Yeah, and this is the initial setup for that, too. He talks about the double tragedy where Western accumulation of capital, by stealing it from Latin America, by robbing it from them at their bloody expense, made it harder for them to accumulate capital in the future, Latin America. Right? It puts them behind. And so when they're trying to build up their base later, as we'll see, they are already like that. Now they're competing with way more advanced technologically societies because they've been held back.
Yeah. So their resources have been completely fucked over. We'll see that too. Like they don't just like take it and then it comes back. Like they ruin it basically. They suck the land dry.
Yeah.
And then like they weren't allowed to develop like an industrial kind of equipment and stuff like that. So yeah, they're just like set up to fail completely.
Yes. And the people in those colonies who were put in control, basically, at first directly, like the viceroys and everyone like that, and people who served them. And then later on, like the leadership of those countries that was really, you know, they're all puppets. And that's a crazy thing, is that none of them are spending any of the money domestically to like build up a home market or anything. It's only like he talks about kind of this just lavish spending on just ridiculous, building churches beside churches sort of thing.
Covered in gold and just statues and fountains and all kinds of shit, like gambling halls. Like it makes it sound like this really cool, depraved place.
Yeah. And it's just, you know, and who could participate in that was just like the wealthy, you know. It'd just be a spectacle to everyone else who just has time to work and sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a big part of later on the when we talk about that Latin America is held back, is because whatever is paid to the people who are keeping things running in the country domestically doesn't go to helping the country at all. It's just wasted.
Yeah, absolutely. He gives an example of this whole cycle, the ridiculous spending and stuff, with the example of Potosi, which is in present-day Bolivia.
Yeah.
And they had this huge silver mine, and later they found tin as well. And he goes into great detail about how deadly the mines were, like silver poisoning. Like he had like 7 out of 10 people would fucking die from silver poisoning. You know, you'd go from freezing temperatures, you know, outside to, you know,
sweltering
intense heat on the inside of the mine. You know, lots of injuries, mercury poisoning, all kinds of shit. Like, not only that, like the smoke from the ovens would ruin surrounding lands, like for crops and stuff too. Man. So just devastation. Complete devastation. Yes. Yeah.
Of the people working there, of the land that they're cutting this out of.
So let's say I'm a capitalist and I'm like, but Grady and Christine, these are jobs. They gave the Indians jobs.
True, they did. And, you know, that means that they bettered their life in some way, right?
Yeah, clearly.
They gave them an opportunity and all this. But
you know, the 3 that didn't die out of the 10.
Right. The other ones were just killed.
Yeah.
It's not, okay, what were native populations doing before the Europeans came over and magnanimously gave them jobs?
They were working the lands themselves and doing a much better job at sustainability. And like a lot of these cultures have like a spiritual connection to the land as well. And they were taking care of it. Like they knew what they were fucking doing.
Yeah. And it's not to say, you know, all of these societies had worked everything out. I mean, they were still unequal in some, if you have more like, you know, the Aztecs or something, you still had like
you have war and empires and stuff like that for sure. But they at least knew how to utilize their resources without like completely destroying the land. And that's a big deal. Like we are trying to figure out how to do that now.
Yeah. And it's because they're living there, right? This whole thing, he sets us up as like, this is particularly bad and extractive and murderous, devastating, right? Because it's built not for them. It's built to take stuff away.
No, they didn't come here to be like, oh, you poor things, let me show you how technology works. Like, no, they came here to say, give me a straw, let me suck this dry.
Yeah, yeah.
This is for somebody else to enjoy.
Yeah, yeah. You wouldn't do that if you were living there yourself, because you have to deal with that. But if you're far away somewhere else, who cares?
Yeah. And if you were like living there like as the viceroy or something, then yeah, you're going to spend it on stupid shit.
Yeah. So in the example of Potosi, we see the boom bust cycle, because when everything's getting ripped out of the land like that and the people are getting sent in to, you know, for their blood to fuel the machine, for the people it's benefiting there, for the rich elite that are kind of the lieutenants of all this, life's great. Like you're saying, just profligate spending all over the place. It's a boom town.
Yeah, it's a real Marie Antoinette situation, I feel like. That's what I pictured, at least.
Yeah, and he gives us several examples of this, right? And it just kind of jumps around. It's just like, okay, here's what happened here. Here's what happened in this other little small town no one's ever heard of because it used to be, you know, this big resource. And then when it dries up, when there's no more to extract, they're just abandoned.
Yeah, and he writes about how he's visiting these places, I'm assuming before he's writing the book, and it's just like ghost towns and like just slums next to these opulent churches that have been stripped of all their metal. Like, it's just horrible.
Yeah, it's just a husk.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've talked about this before too. I think it was on our drunk episode with Noam Chomsky, and I guess we got way off topic. But we were talking about how like the idea of these civilizations as like advanced or not advanced, and just like how skewed that kind of perspective is.
Yeah.
And, you know, he gives examples of like all the things these civilizations had already done. You know, like they found evidence of the Incas doing surgery, like because they would find skulls with gold and silver plates like in them.
Yeah.
And like, you know, obviously people know like Mayans did like astronomy and they figured out the number 0, which is a big deal. And like Aztecs were great at irrigation. They built a fucking entire city on a lake. Like,
yeah. That's dedication
cool.
to your symbols right there. Like,
well, you know, the eagle landed on the cactus and they had to build it there. Okay.
But it was in a lake. I would have just pretended that I didn't see that eagle and would go, you know, wait till I found
this
another
eagle
one
over here?
Yeah, I would just be like, "Oh, is he in the? Oh, he's on the lake. Never mind. Just turn the other way.
Don't worry about it.
Let's keep looking."
But yeah, so like, you know, there's this misconception again, like of this being a good thing, of this being like, oh, well, they got all this technology. It's like, first off, at what fucking cost? Secondly, they had technology. It was just different. Like, what the fuck? Also, they're still human beings who should not be slaughtered. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, these were advanced civilizations that they were encountering. You know, there's, I think it's Cortez and Pizarro who encounter the Aztec and the Incan empires respectively, like marvel at the cities that they're coming in to, you know, destroy. And
yeah, for sure. For sure.
So yeah, and plus there is the question of, if they're not advanced, does that justify doing this stuff? Like,
absolutely not.
What are people who are saying this trying to achieve by saying, you know, yeah, well, they're bringing technology and everything. Like, okay, don't people deserve to just like be alive?
Yeah. Could you bring the technology without all the killing? That'd be great.
Yeah. And then we get to some cool parts, sort of. They like start out cool, and then everything ends in tragedy, of course.
These all go downhill so badly.
But we get some rebellions. And he talks about a guy named Tupac Amaru.
Yeah, tell me about Tupac.
This is like a later one, because there's a guy named Tupac Amaru who was like an Incan emperor.
Okay.
I mean, this is like his nephew, I want to say, or some descendant of his. And it's an uprising. He's like actually kind of well-educated and seen as kind of a local leader, even by the Spanish, who kind of intend for him to be like, you know, sort of a
go-between.
A go-between. But he just gets pissed. He like learns more about what's happening, sees the suffering of his people, and decides he's going to do something about it.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, he declares this rebellion and gets a following, orders the liberation of slaves.
Nice.
Abolishes these taxes that were on them, and abolishes forced labor.
Also good.
Yeah, but in the rebellion, he ends up getting betrayed.
That sucks.
Yeah, and they kill him quite brutally.
And then some, yeah.
Because they torture him beforehand. I think they kill people, his relatives and stuff, in front of him.
Yeah, like his wife and kids and shit.
Yeah. He gets drawn. Well, they attempted to draw and quarter him, which is, or people debate as to which particular thing is drawing and quartering. If that's the thing where they draw your intestines out or whatever, or if that's where they quarter you with the horses thing.
Yeah.
So that's what they did to him, was the horse thing.
Ugh.
Or they tried to, or he wouldn't break or something like that.
Oh my God.
So they ended up like slicing him up.
Jesus.
Yeah. And they sent like his body parts to different places.
What the fuck, man?
Within Peru.
Gross. And then they like kill all of his descendants to like a ridiculous amount.
I think they thought about doing that, and then
I have my notes. They murdered his descendants to the 4th generation.
Well, you never know, man. These kids could rise up.
That great-great-grandkid could be the next revolutionary.
The Spaniards executed the remainder of his family except for his 12-year-old son, Fernando, who had been condemned to die with him, but was instead imprisoned in Spain for the rest of his life.
Oh, how generous.
Yeah. His houses were demolished, their sites strewn with salt, his goods confiscated, his relatives declared infamous, and all documents relating to his descent were burnt.
Jesus. Okay. Declared Infamous is like a good album title, by the way.
That is, yeah. Maybe one day we too will be declared infamous.
Probably. So yeah, he goes into some more, I guess, very brief retellings of revolutions and includes some cool quotes from some people. Mm-hmm. He mentions Miguel Hidalgo. He mentions Jose Maria Morelos, both from Mexico. Mm-hmm. And the latter says, you must regard as enemies all the rich, the nobles, and high-ranking officials.
Which you do. Yeah, you do need
Got
to do that. No, these guys are figures in the Mexican War of Independence. Father Hidalgo gives the famous grito, the cry, to rise up in rebellion. He kind of leads the initial phase of that before being killed.
Yeah.
Jose Maria Morelos is someone who takes up, I think also a priest who takes up the banner after that.
Priest into that.
Yeah, and then also gets killed. Mm-hmm. But they were kind of cool. They were kind of proto-communist sort of ideas of, it's not like Marxist communists for sure, because that wasn't around yet. But they were championing like land reform, abolition of slavery, a social revolution.
Yeah, very much the whole like land and bread and peace kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. He also mentions a guy from more modern times, Juan Velasco Alvarado, who was a general in Peru, who took power in a coup in 1968.
Oh.
The president before him, Belaunde, was like very business friendly, kind of right wing guy, and this guy it's weird because it's a coup by a general, but it was like radical. It was like left wing. Started doing nationalization, education reform, land reform, stuff like that. And he kind of gives this as an example of someone who is evoking the memory of Tupac Amaru, because he's got a quote here. Campesino, your poverty shall no longer feed the master.
Nice.
Yeah, so he was kind of like referring back to, the generations of plunder that had been happening.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing I did want to add, though, is that I think it's really important for him to bring up, even, it is kind of brief and we move on from it, but bring up these rebellions to kind of show that people weren't just doing nothing, weren't just sitting there like, damn, I'm getting impressed today,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it's important to know that like people weren't just okay with it.
Yeah. And there's in traditional history classes and stuff, there's usually just not enough time to kind of talk about, what were regular people doing during this? You can kind of like briefly say, people,
they made cheese.
Yeah. And especially when you're talking about some sort of an unjust system, some sort of exploitation, it's kind of easy to be like, damn, people should have done something. Like they did. They just got crushed.
They did. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. So, and crushed, they did. They did get. So I have in my notes what I have coined Christine's summary for the people. You can also just call it the people summary. If you sign up for our Patreon, you get to see my notes. There's lots of them, lots of all caps. I'm very angry in this one. So, Christine's summary for the people, TM here. Basic cycle. You brutalize people, you extract the resource, you ban manufacturing, and you leave whenever it's all gone.
Yeah, that's
basically what you do here.
That's how would we put this?
The capitalist credo.
Easy recipe for imperialism. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you do. And he gives, more examples. A lot of this book just becomes like, one, it's a bummer, but it's just example after example of like, oh gosh, just more brutality. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He talks about the Yaqui from Sonora, the Sonora region of Mexico. Mm-hmm. They were displaced and sent to work on plantations in the Yucatan. Yeah. They had over 100,000 slaves, and 2/3 of them died during the first year.
That's a pretty high turnover rate.
Yeah. You had tribes in Brazil. They had 230 tribes in 1900. By the time this book was being written, it was down to 140.
Who knows how many now?
Tribes.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's not many now, yeah.
Well, they're setting the thing on fire pretty much, so the
Yeah.
Amazon. Yeah, and what is the cause of all this? It's not because these people did anything to wrong the Europeans or anything like that. It's just they were in the wrong place. They had too much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's brutal. Like he talks about shooting them from helicopters.
Yeah.
Poisoning them.
So he says dynamite has been tossed into their villages and that they've been given gifts of sugar mixed with strychnine and salt mixed with arsenic. So great gifts, y'all.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, no, that's brutal. And
yeah.
There's more examples of it with just how the oppression just wears people down. They talk about the use of coca leaves and like a liquor called aguardiente. Mm-hmm. And to me, this was like, the oppressed class kind of being inflicted with these, using them as a way of coping with this shitty situation. And it was productive for the occupiers too, for the Spanish, where like the church was getting a cut of this or something like that.
Yeah, they were fucking getting money from coca leaf sales. Cool church. And back on the substance abuse, I think you can see that today with the opioid crisis. Like,
yeah,
you gotta fucking self-medicate. We don't have fucking healthcare, and you're working a retail job where you're on your feet all day, you're doing manual labor. Like, what the fuck else are you gonna do?
Yeah, and it's it's a symptom of people's desperation.
Absolutely. So a lot of this is focused on Latin America, but I mean, I think we need to talk about slavery in Latin America as well, like not just indigenous slavery, but
African
slavery of Africans. So 10 million slaves were brought to Brazil, and they would baptize them before they crossed the Atlantic in case they died, because a lot of them died.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then they were required to attend mass, but not allowed to sit in the pews. Cool.
Yeah, that's
I'm laughing because it's terrible. Like, what the fuck else can you do? Mm-hmm. Like, it's just a big cluster. If enslaving, the natives weren't enough, I guess too many of them died. They needed to go enslave some more people.
Yeah. And mass amounts of people die on the journey across the Atlantic and then die. Or they die when they shortly after arriving. We talked about they would just leave people there who were too sick to sell as slaves. Yeah. They would just leave them there in the docks like, you'll die eventually and move on. Yeah. And then people would die of overwork, of just being exploited. And he goes on to kind of give some other examples, not just of silver, but also discovery of gold, discovery of diamonds in Brazil. This ends up being the same pattern, right? The same boom bust pattern, the same cycle goes through, and the same amount of, again, human blood being spilled to make it all happen.
Yeah. Yeah. If your cycle requires that, not a great cycle.
Yeah. And capitalism requires that. So not
absolutely requires it. To this fucking day is the thing. Like that's what I took from this. Like, obviously I'm very angry about like the fucking, murder of my ancestors. Not a fan of that.
Yes.
But I carry this with me in terms of being angry at the state of the world today, because we definitely still do this. We still exploit people's labor for cheap clothes and cheap technology.
Yeah. And
like rare earth minerals and all kinds of shit. Like we are required to be a little bit racist in order to get things cheap. That's really what it comes down to.
For sure. And on a global scale, that's built in.
Absolutely. You look at like the clothing industry. It's horrible about this. Technology, all of it, basically. Food. Oh my God, food is very bad about this.
Yes. Yeah. And we'll get into that in this next section, actually. Chapter 2. King Sugar and Other Agricultural Monarchs. King
Sugar sounds like he would be a cute Adventure Time character, but he is not.
Yeah. No, King Sugar does sound nice.
But he's not. All right. Christine's summary for the people. Here's what happens in this chapter.
All right.
You get a cash crop.
All right.
Usually it's brought over, which I learned from this.
Yeah.
I did not realize that coffee and sugar do not grow naturally in the Caribbean.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting discovery.
Yeah. So they plant something and they realize, oh shit, it grows great here. So foreign interests, just plant the shit out of it and destroy the soil. Because like, hey, bad for soil to plant the same thing over and over again. Duh.
Who knew? Who knew? The natives knew, actually.
They actually knew. And that's why they were able to feed themselves for fucking centuries. They force it to become a monoculture, and basically you can't feed yourself anymore because you're not growing your fucking, potatoes or whatever.
Yeah.
And So to feed people, the rich people that live there get to import whatever the fuck they want because they made money off of the sugar or whatever it was. And the poor people eat like rats and shit, basically.
And dirt.
And literally dirt.
Actual dirt.
Yeah.
That is, you're spot on with the summary. That is it.
Yeah.
Sugar comes in, and then other crops he talks about. But wherever they set up, wherever the imperialists set up, they introduce a monoculture and destroy the land for their own gain.
Yeah, this is something obviously still going on today. Like, we have a real monoculture problem. We have a real agriculture problem. Soil erosion is a huge problem. And it's like, these people fucking knew how to do this literally centuries ago.
Yeah.
And we are just now being like, oh, maybe we should try that. Like,
well, we're just now actually going, because I mean, like, people
we're not
knew about
actually
that.
going to.
People knew about that. They just didn't want
care.
to entertain it as a thing to do because it's less profitable.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's only now that, like, if they keep doing what they're doing, they're literally just going to die with the planet, or their children will. It's only now that they're starting to say, well, maybe we should actually consider.
So irresponsible.
And they probably won't. They probably will just be like, well, that's somebody in the future. That's their problem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, he goes in here and talks about sugar dominating northeastern Brazil, Haiti, Cuba. He kind of jumps around and talks about their experience in these different places.
Yeah. In Brazil, you would work from sunrise to sunset and get half a kilo of manioc starch. Yeah, that's not very much. That's your wage.
Damn.
Yeah, that's not very much food.
That's starvation wages right there.
Yeah, yeah.
They were completely dominant in there. That stood out to me that they said that in some places, droit de seigneur, the right of the first night was still effective.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, it's barbaric that would be around.
Absolutely, yeah. He goes into even more stats, just people living in hovels. Half of babies would die before they're a year old. You had a worse protein deficiency and weight loss that was 40% worse than like in Africa. Child prostitution, like it's just a bad fucking scene.
Yeah. And that's, the experience in northeastern Brazil. Moves on to in the Caribbean, where at some point Haiti has a revolution.
Yeah, the anniversary of this was actually recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was a couple weeks ago. I saw it on Twitter.
Yeah, no, I mean, Haiti had like a slave revolt, basically, where they rose up and reclaimed their country for themselves, drove the French out. Afterward, to get their independence recognized, they had to pay France. They had to pay them like an indemnity. They had to pay back and say like, sorry,
That's insane. Like, I don't understand how that works, I guess. Like, I guess people like embargoed them and shit until they did that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm like, isn't the whole point of independence be like, nah, I'm done with you? Like,
Sure,
seems weird. It seems like beating somebody up and then being like, hey, here's $5 or whatever. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what it was for trade.
Yeah. Ugh. It's gross.
It talks about the experience that Cuba has as well.
This was an interesting one. So, I mean, he talks about the same kind of cycle of the monoculture and stuff like that. Like, they were super dependent on sugar. Like, that was their fucking economy. And they had this huge unemployed population. I think because it's like seasonal work too. Yeah. And all of their food was imported. And I mean, just to kind of show how dominating it was, 13 U.S. sugar producers owned over 47% of the total area of sugarcane.
That is wild.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's just, it's an oligarchy,
Absolutely. Yeah. And so he doesn't go into detail, I don't believe, of like, I guess they would call it the Cuban Revolution.
Yes.
Assuming?
Yeah.
Okay. But, and he talks about how basically they were starting from not scratch, but negative, like they had a monoculture. They had this system where if something broke down in one of their factories, they would have to call somebody and be like, hey, what do I do? Instead of like, they didn't have like their own technicians that knew what to do. It was all like phone based. Yeah,
they would just give you instructions. And then if you couldn't do it, they would send some people over to do it. They didn't want you to have the know-how. They didn't want them to be able to work it themselves.
Yeah. And that's definitely a big pattern here. Is like this heavy restriction on manufacturing and food processing. It's weird.
And so, revolutionary Cuba, like you said, they're starting in the whole the sugar monoculture had really hurt them before. So it was kind of weird, but they ended up having to still use sugar and its export, its export potential, like the money coming in from that.
Yeah.
They had to use that as a way to be able to industrialize and diversify and everything. Yeah, I thought that was interesting that they...
Well, yeah, because, in that case, the profits would go to actually setting up more shit and not just to, the 13 U.S. people that own the sugar.
Right, yeah. And they were super hampered in terms of how they could do that because they couldn't trade with so many people because the U.S. hated them.
Yeah. It was definitely hobbled in that way. Shout out the literacy brigades at one point, which I liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. He talked about the U.S. fuckery down there, Bay of Pigs, which we've talked about in the Shake of our episode. And this Alan Dulles motherfucker.
I hate this guy.
This guy sucks. Tell me about this guy that I hate.
Alan Dulles, CIA director. He was, his brother, John Foster Dulles, was in charge of the State Department.
Cool brothers.
Yeah, no, what could go wrong, right? One State Department brother.
I'd love to be invited to that Christmas party.
These guys are assholes, and they just go around, knocking over whatever countries they think they can knock over. Alan Dulles was on the board of the United Fruit Company, as well as the Francisco Sugar Company in Cuba. And when the revolutionary Cuban government expropriated their company, they got pissed. Like, they sued and were like, oh, you actually, remember when we said about the tax thing, how they would be like, oh, we're not worth anything.
Oh, yeah.
And so the government was like, cool, well, here's the money that your worthless company is worth, here's $3.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, what? We're actually worth $51 million. That's exactly what happened here,
God, shitheads.
Yeah. General jackasses.
Absolutely.
So they had to deal with stuff like that, with the shortages. There was a quote in here that I liked. He said that they found out that socialism is built with clenched teeth and revolution is no evening stroll.
Oh, yeah. True.
Yeah, something maybe for us to keep in mind is if we ever get to this in our lifetimes, it's probably not going to be that easy.
No, not going to be pleasant. That's for sure.
Yeah. And also a good line in here, we're referring to kind of like, despite things like the Bay of Pigs and despite like all these attempts to undermine it. It says, Cuba doesn't fall despite constant harassment because strange dictatorship, its people defend it.
I know. Yeah. This comes up a couple of times with these movements. Like you have something that seems very intense, and in my initial response would be like, oh, it's a little militaristic or something, but it's seems popular. People like it though. Like, what are you going to fucking do?
True. Yeah. All right. What do we want to get to next?
I don't know. I highlighted this line here. I thought that was interesting. He's talking about England's sugar trade and stuff like that. And he says this line, Britain became the leader in the anti-slavery campaign. British industry needed international markets with more purchasing power, which led it to preach the gospel of wages. I have never made that connection before. Is that a thing? Is that why they did that? No
one wrote it down, I don't think. I don't think anyone said, here's our master plan. But it does make sense. It kind of falls under, he later on talks about the cycle of protectionism and free trade, right? So you can draw the line and say, okay, well, once British industry develops enough and it needs to have a foreign market in addition to its domestic market, it's got to have people to sell to. And if all the other countries are full of, a few rich slave owners and masses of slaves, there's not enough of a demand there because the slaves can't demand anything besides just food and basic shelter. So unless you can sell enough stuff to the few masters, then
so gross.
Then you can't do it. So you have to say, actually, you guys, don't do slavery anymore. Pay workers so that they have enough money to buy our stuff.
That's insane.
Yeah, and with any class interest thing, any sort of analysis by Marx or whatever, he never tries to paint it as they never try to paint it as a secret plan that gets executed. It's like stage one.
Cabal.
Yeah. It's nothing like that. It's just the social forces push people in this direction.
It's a scientific thing. It's just when this happens, why happens,
Yeah. So it's, we're not saying that they woke up one day and said,
they twirled their mustaches.
Yeah. We've got to introduce wage labor. You know, it's just, that's how they started. The two went hand in hand, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the superstructure plays a role in here too. Like, I think, you know, as the abolition movement grew, they probably were like, okay, this is no longer in vogue.
Yeah, that's true. There was a thing in here about slavery where, and the whole theme here is, of course, that capitalism exploitation of Latin America here and all of its riches, you know, this was built off of slavery, of enslavement of people, you know?
Absolutely.
And there's this little part in here where he talks about Queen Elizabeth finding out that this guy had smuggled some slaves. She said it was detestable and would call down vengeance from heaven upon the undertakers. But when he told her that he had exchanged it for all this cargo and everything, she forgave him and became his business partner.
What a shithead. I see earlier in the book in 1609 or 1601, Philip III banned forced labor in the mines by decree, at the same time sent secret instructions ordering its continuation, quote, in case that measure should reduce production.
Well,
no
there
more
you go.
exploitation unless I lose money.
That's labor laws in liberal society. I guess, yeah, the next thing he kind of talks about are these revolts against slavery.
Yeah, he talks about this one in Brazil where these slaves ran off, like, basically into the forests, and they created their own kingdom in northeastern Brazil.
Yeah, the kingdom of Palmares.
Yeah, and, you know, of course, the slave masters did not like that. They went in and tried to get them back, and they fought them off for years, and they had an elected chief, diverse agriculture, no money. Sounds great to me.
Yeah.
And according to as of this writing, no slave rebellion in the world lasted as long as Palmares.
It's awesome. They were kind of proto-communist again. You know, it had
basically, yeah, just like fuck this shit.
And yeah, there's these slaves in Cuba who, and this is why this book. One of the things that is interesting about this book is we're back to Cuba. But now we're talking about slavery beforehand instead of revolutionary Cuba. Kind of jumps back and forth a lot.
It does, yeah.
But Cuban slaves committing mass suicide, so they are brought back to life in Africa based on their beliefs.
Mm-hmm. And then like they're fucking the shithead masters would then mutilate their bodies to prevent this.
To like show it to the other slaves and be like, look what happens. If you kill yourself, I'm going to mutilate your body so you can't do that thing.
Yeah, it's horrifying. Just, ugh.
Yeah. But what I like about this section is, again, he is showing that people were resisting. It wasn't like people. Sometimes students will do this when we're first learning about slavery and what kind of it entails and everything. They're like, damn, if I was then, if I lived back then, I would have run away or I would have done something. I wouldn't have done that. It's like, well,
yeah.
People didn't. People did try to like fight against it. That's a thing.
Gosh, yeah. Let's see. He goes into some other cash crops: rubber, cacao, cotton, coffee. Mm-hmm. One note that I found interesting, he says that, I think he was talking about the rubber industry at this point, that employers had an agreement that they wouldn't hire workers with debt to other employers. That is just evil.
Yeah, employers' agreements. It's fine for them to organize, but not for us, right?
Yeah, what the fuck, man? And we didn't really get into this, but part of that encomienda system is getting these people into massive debt. Mm-hmm. And then saying, oh, well, now you're basically enslaved because you owe me because I paid for, the food that you ate and the tools and all this shit. And they'll provide lots of liquor. So that way you get more drunk and you like keep buying liquor.
Yep.
And then guess what? You're basically enslaved.
Yep. It's like a souped up version of a company town, pretty much. Basically, yeah. Company plantation. And it's super effective. They pile on this debt and then you can't leave because they've made this agreement, It's that whole like cooperation thing is super effective. And I guess that's one of the main, reasons they're so afraid and so opposed to labor unions. They don't want that sort of it's the thing. Wrong kind of cooperation. Yeah, they don't want to turn on them. Yeah, they understand that it's powerful. Mm-hmm. And another example of powerful cooperation, they talk about this company, Anderson, Clayton and Company, a U.S. firm that basically just nailed the game on vertical integration. Yeah. They sell cotton fibers
food, cotton production, fertilizers, seeds, insecticides, oils, fat, cotton oil, cotton, I guess fat, there's probably margarine, cacao, and coffee. So basically everything.
Yep.
And what was fascinating, they didn't own the land. They would extend credit to people to work the land and then sell it to them at a low price just so they could supervise. Like they basically just
they were the middlemen.
They just schemed their way into this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so many of these companies seem to be like that, is they're just there to kind of buy and sell. Mm-hmm. Anderson, Clayton and Company, a cotton trading firm, started in Oklahoma City.
Oh.
1904. They moved to Houston very early in the 20th century.
Get out of here.
And eventually they were acquired by the Quaker Oats Company.
Cool. That nice smiling oat man.
Yeah.
Actually a pillager.
So I don't know what, obviously they're probably doing something shady today.
I still don't trust. That's General Mills, right? I'm sure they do some bad shit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. Quaker Oats, rather, but...
I thought Quaker Oats was owned by General Mills.
Oh, it could be. Man, it
They're
turns
all
out
owned by the same three people.
Yeah, so. And this, with rubber, we talked about sugar, rubber, now coffee and cacao, all this is going to see the same cycle, the same exploitative circle. The people who are actually, producing the things get basically fucking nothing.
Yeah, can I give the coffee example?
Sure, yeah.
So this is in 1962 in Colombia. Only 5% of the price yielded, from tree to consumer, goes to wages. 5%!
Yeah, he has that whole breakdown of who it goes to, the middlemen and the taxes and everything. 5% to the... I mean, I would love to see the numbers on that. That was in 1962. I'd love to see the numbers on that. Now it's probably still terrible,
I'm sure it is. It might be worse.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane. And he talked about the boom and bust cycle again. In 1969, Brazil burned 78 million sacks of coffee, which is the result of 5 harvests and 200,000 people's hard work, backbreaking work. So they could drive up prices because they were getting priced out by other places.
Yeah.
Insane.
That reminds me of Marx and Engels, man. Crisis is not scarcity, but it's the overabundance, They demanded profit. And that's why they had to set all that on fire.
It's insane.
It is crazy. He talks about these leaders who saw the emerging coffee market and everything and how it was dominating their countries. They saw that kind of as a good thing, a new stable thing that would help them modernize and grow and develop. Mm-hmm. And how that was very wrong.
Can we talk about this guy?
Sure. Yeah. There was a big event because of this liberal leader named Jorge Eliaser Gaithan.
His nicknames are the Wolf or the Idiot. So that's quite the range.
Man, that would be a nickname that you would call him, when you're talking about him. Not to him, certainly,
yeah,
right?
Probably not. Yeah.
Maybe, he was just a himbo and was cool with it.
He does sound like a himbo.
He got shot. Mm-hmm. And then La Violencia erupted. Basically a long civil war, a decade long in Colombia, 1948 to 1958.
That's a long one.
Yeah. Yeah. Initially, this is a war between kind of conservatives and liberals, basically. Mm-hmm. Eventually, though, the liberals sign a peace pact with the conservatives and agree to go after the communists.
Wow, ain't that a trend?
Yeah.
Where have I seen that before?
And yeah, the whole example, and he talks about the violence there kind of being this expression of, the horrors of the system laid bare.
Yeah.
But I think the whole episode is an example of how the coffee trade and the prosperity that it brought, it didn't affect the social order. It doesn't change who's in charge. It doesn't give the people more power. It just helped accumulate capital and make the country more dependent on its colonial masters.
Yeah. And not to jump ahead too far, but he talks about this later when he talks about other countries when they gain their quote unquote independence. often that first wave of independence is really just the rich people there wanting to benefit directly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like Mexico's a good example of that. Like the Porfirio Diaz regime was just like, it was the same thing, essentially. For most people, their lives didn't change.
Yeah, yeah. And, you do start, in the Mexican example, you do see initially after independence, you have different governments that do, I guess they liberalize things in a good way in terms of from authoritarian.
Yeah, from totally depraved to acceptable.
Yeah, you do see some reforms that are good in that at that time. But yeah, once you get to the time of Porfirio Diaz, you are looking at just autocracy again, Mm-hmm. But yeah, back to coffee and all that. Takes over Central America, conscription of the natives into serfdom, basically. Same thing. Latifundios and minifundios. Minifundios being like their own personal very little patch of land. Yeah. That they're allowed to kind of like work in their time off, like in the dark,
Yeah. Not a thing.
It's actually like their form of payment, though. It's like they don't get paid in the latifundios. They get paid by like, oh, yeah, I'll allow you to work on a little bit of land.
A second job.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Oh, gee, thanks.
Yeah.
And then we get to some good old-fashioned U.S. imperialism.
Wonderful.
Tell me about this William Walker motherfucker, because he seems like a real bad guy.
William Walker, first of all, the first thing you got to know about William Walker is he was crazy.
Like, legitimately
I don't know.
Mentally ill.
He seems like he has some sort of a mental condition of, like, delusions of grandeur.
Okay. I mean, it seems, I have in my notes here, he declared himself president of Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Honduras.
So, yeah, that was a thing that he would routinely do.
Just be like, I'm in charge now.
Not just there. He has listed under his Wikipedia bio here. He was around in the 1800s, mid 1800s is what we're talking about for him. But on his Wikipedia bio, he's got President of the Republic of Nicaragua, first President of the Republic of Sonora.
Oh, like Mexico?
Yeah, and first President of the Republic of Lower California.
Okay.
Now, Sonora and Lower California were both like in northwestern Mexico, basically.
Okay, yeah.
And they're unrecognized states. And he does kind of what he did in Latin America. He just goes in, like acts like he's in charge, like with a little mercenary band, and sees if he can take over. And then all these attempts fail. He does this in he's working in the book here. It describes him working with bankers. They're underlings of Cornelius Vanderbilt, this business tycoon in America. Mm-hmm. And they wanted him to do this so that they could like steal equipment or whatever, basically to rip him off and go into business for themselves.
What the fuck?
And so they're like, yeah, this William Walker guy, he'll do it. He'll go in there and take over the place and run it for us. Yeah.
What the fuck?
It's crazy.
He also restored slavery.
Yeah, that was as part of a bid to win the support of southern states in the United States.
Wow.
Cool that way they would be like, oh yeah, let's annex this place so that we have another slave state.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's crazy. He just goes through and does war over there. He just like invades.
Professional invader.
He comes in with a foreign army of just kind of mercenaries. He's got he organized a battalion of 4 companies, of which one was composed of Germans, a second of Frenchmen, and the other 2 of Americans. 240 men. And he goes through and takes over Nicaragua. And then ends up going to war with neighboring countries. They kind of all team up to go against him because he sucks.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It's just insane. There are some really bonkers quotes in this chapter.
Yeah. Well, when the U.S. starts doing imperialism, that's what you get.
This one from Taft in 1912. The day is not far distant when 3 stars and stripes at 3 equidistant points will mark our territory. One at the North Pole, another at the Panama Canal, and the third at the South Pole. The whole hemisphere will be ours, in fact, as by virtue of our superiority of race, it already is ours morally.
Damn. Taft.
Cool president.
Doing some fanfic there. Some dystopian sci-fi.
Yeah, speculative fiction.
Yeah. That's, I guess our timeline could be darker.
Technically, yes, it could be worse. But not by much.
Yeah.
Jesus.
He also declared that foreign policy should really just be all about making profits for the capitalists. He was just open about this, you know?
Absolutely.
I don't know, I kind of appreciate that politicians used to be more like open about, like, there's that one old quote of like the business of the American government is business, you know? Like presidents used to be more open and be like, hey, look, we're capitalists. We want to do this.
This is what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. If we have to give you some scraps, fine. But like mainly we're all about this.
Yeah. Yeah. They have a quote from this Marine. Mm-hmm. Let's see.
Smedley Butler.
Smedley D. That's a bad name. Anyway, sorry, man. I mean, props to him for coming clean.
Yeah.
Because he admits, in short, I was a racketeer for capitalism. I helped make Tampico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City Bank. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers. Like, he just lists off all this shit that he basically freed up for American companies. Mm-hmm. It's insane.
Yeah. He wrote this book in 1935 called War is a Racket, where he kind of just, you know, like you said, kind of confesses all these things, and he's using it to kind of criticize American foreign policy as imperialist, as just geared for profits, and he becomes like this kind of, you know, pacifist in later life. He's interesting in 1933, before he wrote that book and before everybody knew what he was about, I guess. By that point in his life, he was already like a really super decorated Marine.
Yeah, I bet.
And he became he's kind of cool because he didn't do a coup against FDR. In the business plot, there was this plot by American businessmen to coup FDR and
Holy
to
shit.
install Smedley Butler as like a dictator.
What?
Yeah.
This guy
a military
almost
coup.
was the ruler of the United States.
But he turned him down and told people about it.
Book.
And then they were like, "Oh, damn, he actually hates all this stuff." Because I mean, he was doing imperialism before this, so I guess they assumed
actively.
Yeah, but can't judge insane. A book by their imperialist actions, I guess.
I still can. He still did the things. He still killed a lot of people.
That's true. Yeah, he's still a troop, but he's cool for not cooing us, I guess.
Yeah, low bar.
Galeano talks about the U.S. occupation of Haiti, which I literally did not know about.
I didn't either. I mean, I don't know any of this shit. This was all news to me.
Fair enough. You're right. I didn't know details about most of it at all. I knew like vaguely shit sucked is what I knew.
Yeah. I mean, like when you hear about, like when you cover the high school version of this, they talk about imperialism. They talk about it as like, oh, we dug the Panama Canal. That was cool. Like, they don't really talk about the fucking brutality behind it and, like, the gross racism, like that Taft quote. They don't talk about any of that. They're just like, we grew a lot of bananas. This was pretty fun.
It sounds like, they make it sound like a Habitat for Humanity project, because it sounds like we're going over there and building cities and, building, putting together farms and all this stuff. Like, we're just making shit happen for people, and it's good. But, they don't cover what that's actually for, that we're not building a farm so they can have a farm. We're building it to take somewhere else.
To feed us. Yeah. I mean, I don't think most people know about U.S. imperialism. Like, I think if you ask like just a person on the street, like, do you think that's a thing? They'd be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. In America. The rest of the world knows very well about American imperialism.
No, I mean, someone just off the streets in the U.S., they'd be like, imperialism, isn't that like, I don't know, England? Wasn't that them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or France or something. Yeah. So, the U.S. occupation of Haiti went on for 20 years.
Jesus. Like,
under direct governmental control. Like, they were passing laws about this in Congress and stuff. Like, they knew about it. I don't know, they knew about it, but like, it was on purpose. It was like, we are occupying this place.
It was on purpose.
It wasn't indirect or anything. It was just, boom, we're in charge.
I accidentally took over a country.
They introduced segregation because, I mean, you know, you got to have, when your businessmen are going down there, they can't see like an integrated society.
No, that's too much.
Forced labor. They killed 1,500 workers. The United Fruit was basically running that place as its own colony, you know?
Yeah, not a company town, a company country.
Yes. Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh, yeah, you have the note on there about the bank.
Okay, yeah. So he also says the local government refused to turn the Banco Nacional into a branch of New York's National City Bank. And so they suspended the salaries of the president and his ministers, so give him a second chance to think that one over.
I'm sure they capitulated at that point, you know. That's wild. Just that's take so over bad. The National Bank of Haiti with a New York City bank. Just that's a branch of ours now.
Insane.
But yeah, man, that's what they were doing.
And again, to reiterate, the people were standing up against this. At one point, there was a strike for, like, the banana workers had a strike. And United Fruit mowed those guys down completely. Just destroyed them. Just shot them. Yeah,
and this, you know, over the course of this occupation, right, we said 1,500 workers mowed down in that strike. Overall, you have, you know, around 2,200, you know, known people killed, probably more.
Yeah.
Violent stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I called this next section Dictator Time.
Dictators. All right.
All right, Christine's summary for the people. Here's what happens when you get dictators, guys. If any of this sounds familiar, watch out. You may have a dictator. So you get someone in charge, probably placed in charge by some sort of U.S.-backed coup. And they continue to cut deals with the U.S./United Fruit. What's the difference? Am I right? Eventually, poor people get pissed and they rise up, or they maybe even elect a socialist. Whoa. And then the U.S. is like, man, no, that was our dude. We were friends. And so they either directly invade or they hire mercenaries to take them out. Yeah.
It's like, hey, actually, no, don't do that. Get that guy out of there. What are you doing? That's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And this happens literally fucking everywhere. It is insane.
It happens in Nicaragua. The U.S. occupies that country as well. We just do this all over Central America and the Caribbean. They're called the Banana Wars, which is a cooler name.
It's kind of goofy.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, that's its appeal, in my opinion.
Okay.
This happens from 1898 to 1934.
That's a long time. Jeez.
Yeah, we're intervening, invading is what that means. Yeah. Cuba, Panama, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico, Haiti, Dominican Republic. All of them had some form of U.S. invasion during that time.
And it's all under the guise of this anti-communist, like, aesthetic. Like, a lot of it is, at least. Like, in El Salvador, they were saying, like, oh, these are Bolsheviks, you know.
Yeah.
And in Guatemala, they were called communists because they were doing, like, agrarian reforms. And there's an Eisenhower quote that says, we had to get rid of a communist government which had taken over. These people were elected.
Yes, yeah, democratically.
I don't know what you're talking about,
and
man.
They weren't communists. And
they weren't even communists.
They were actually literally capitalists. They were trying to develop their industry so that they wouldn't, you know, but they were, you know, nationalist, I guess, domestic capitalists.
They were nationalizing things, which did not fly well.
Exactly. That's the guy you're talking about, Jacobo Arbenz, right?
Yeah.
They were doing land reform. We mentioned this before when we were talking about in our Che Guevara episode, isn't we? And did land reform. United Fruit hated it, and so communists, we gotta get rid of them. Yeah.
Oh no.
And of course, the U.S. backs this loser,
Armas.
Yeah, Armas.
Armas, and then Mendez. Just a couple dictators.
And when they depose Arbenz, it just descends into a series of dictators. And this struck me. This was astounding. I just didn't know this or had never looked into it. So many of these Latin American countries have dictators or just president, whatever, you know. The person in charge is there for like 2 years at the most. Usually it's just like 1 year, part of a year or something before they get ousted in a fucking coup. And that's just because, like, you know, it's a tale as old as time, man. The USA going in there and destabilizing a region.
Yep.
Once we do it to somebody, we've delegitimized the democratic process, and then next time you don't like a guy, why wait around for another election? Just fucking out him.
Yeah. And like it is literally still happening today. Like, people are scratching their heads like, why is Venezuela so bad right now? It's like, we fucking did it. It was us. Like,
Yeah.
what is wrong? Oh, it's so upsetting. They act like it's like these uncivilized nations. Like, they just haven't figured out democracy yet. Like, no.
It's the meme where the guy like shoots the dude in the chair repeatedly and then is like, why have these people done this?
Exactly. It is exactly that. It's insane, y'all. Like, I don't think enough people know about this, or if they do, they have weird ass excuses why it's okay.
Yeah, it's crazy. And this happens, like we said, throughout the region. There are independence movements happening. And I think he offers a good class analysis here with these independence movements as kind of a bourgeois, revolution sort of thing. It's, however, the bourgeois they don't do the next step. They don't develop like a capitalism at home. They continue to develop capitalism, I guess, but still at the behest of foreign countries, of the imperial masters.
Saying, please, let me sell you something.
Yes, yeah.
This happens in a lot of places. He mentions Uruguay, Argentina, and Mexico, which is my fave, obviously. Let's talk about Mexico.
All right. So in Mexico, the Mexican Revolution, it's not an independence movement per se, because they already had their independence. But it was a revolution nonetheless. They're overthrowing, by that point, the dictatorship of Porfirio Diaz.
Yeah. There's this horrifying quote from John Kenneth Turner.
Oh, yeah.
Just really lays bare what's going on here. He was a journalist, and he wrote this quote: "The U.S. has virtually reduced Diaz to a political dependency, and by doing so has virtually transformed Mexico into a slave colony of the United States."
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong. That was in a book of his titled Barbarous Mexico, which was written to help discredit Mexican President Porfirio Diaz's regime. So he's just like exposing, how shitty it is.
Yeah. Just like, oh, this guy's a literal puppet. Like, we don't fucking need this dude.
Yeah. I mean, because you had 12 million people in the hacienda system, like they were, like he said, essentially slaves.
Yeah. Same shit, different masters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love this saying he wrote. I don't know, like, if this was actually a saying or not, but he has a quote: "Poor Mexico, so far from God and so close to the United States."
Yeah, it's a tough place to be. That's attributed to Porfirio Diaz, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's the short version of this part here. It's overall, the Mexican Revolution is really complicated.
Yeah, we should get into that at some point.
That could be an episode. Like, that's
for sure.
There's so many moving parts there. But yeah, it's against this basic slavery system. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, in 1910, you have the eruption of the Mexican Revolution. Like I said, it's real complicated, but they do oust Porfirio Diaz. He goes into exile. A guy named Francisco Madero rises to power. And he's like basically a disappointment.
Mm-hmm. Like, he's like, oh, I'll totally do reform.
Yes, yeah. He comes in and he's like, oh, I'm going to do all this land reform. I'm going to do everything. The people are going to have power. And it's similar to in the February Revolution in Russia, where you initially have this big, we're getting rid of the Tsar. Oh, everyone thinks we're going to have all this, we're going to do all these things. And then the provisional government comes in and is like, yeah, we'll do like a little,
You want a shitty Congress?
Yeah. And here, that's kind of what Madero does. There's this big popular sentiment, oh, we want all this land reform. Oh, we want this, that, and the other. And instead, he just comes in and is just like, oh, we're going to work with people,
Let's West Wings it up.
Yeah, let's not be dangerous like, Emiliano Zapata over here. He's a bandit.
This guy.
And Madero goes after him,
He ambushes him on his wedding day. Why? Is this a movie? I need to watch this movie.
I'm sure there may be a good...
There's probably some good ones.
A good movie on it.
I bet it has a baller soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
But Emiliano Zapata, let's talk more about him.
Yeah. Killer mustache, if I recall.
Yes, he's got a really cool mustache. Zapata proposed nationalization.
Fuck yeah.
He wanted to expropriate. He wanted to take land from the enemies of the revolution, from all the rich landowners who had fought against it. Take it, redistribute it.
Fuck yeah.
Give it to the people.
Fuck yeah.
And he has kind of his own army, his own like revolutionary force in the south of Mexico, while Pancho Villa had his own army in the north of Mexico, and these were two like revolutionary forces fighting against, you know, the central government in the center of Mexico.
So interesting. I feel like we were raised to think Pancho Villa was very evil.
Yeah, no, that's like the portrayal of him in America is like a bandit, a like a monster, criminal.
Yeah. I'm sure he killed a lot of people. Don't get me wrong.
Sure, yeah.
These guys also did cool stuff. It seems like,
and to be fair, Pancho Villa was like less. He was more of kind of just a warlord figure rather than a revolutionary in terms of left wing. But he was working with Zapata and helping him do
seemed
that.
Cool as fuck.
Yeah, they teamed up basically, and there's a lot of different figures involved in all this, but they end up invading or like conquering Mexico City throughout this, and Madero, I think at this point is like assassinated by now, and they're fighting against someone else completely. But there's a famous picture of them like sitting together in the Mexican presidential palace, like just hanging out. It's like a big party. There's a bunch of people in the photo. They're all just hanging out, like drinking, eating.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Sounds like a party I'd love to be at.
And at some point after that, Zapata starts introducing this radical agrarian reform in his home state. He kind of gets less involved in like the Mexican Revolution overall, nationwide, and just kind of goes back to his region and governs that.
Yeah, so he just kind of starts his own commune.
Pretty much.
His commune's cool. They got max limits for holding sizes of land, and they like structure it according to climate and fertility, and also making sure that like enemies get their shit taken first. Love that.
Nice.
Technical schools, tool factories, rural credit banks, nationalizing sugar mills and distilleries, having a very local democracy, and then establishing Zapatista schools, basically a little indoctrinating, but it's cool, to promote revolutionary principles and authentic democracy. And okay, here's the thing. This is a stupid question. This is still kind of a thing there, right?
It is not still kind of a thing because like it didn't like carry over.
Yeah,
but it's a thing there now. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was reading about it on Twitter the other day. I watched some videos about it. I'm like, this is cool as fuck.
Yeah.
The Rebel Zapatista autonomous municipalities.
Yeah, that's it.
Mares.
And they're communes. This is anarcho-communism, basically.
For sure.
But yeah, no, that's a new or not a completely new it's old now.
But it wasn't from this.
Yeah. I mean, it does harken back to that tradition, but it's not directly carried over.
It's not linear.
More about Zapata, he's trying to do all these things. He's, like we said, influenced by these socialists and anarcho-syndicalist guys. I believe the socialist would have been the founder of, it was actually called the Mexican Liberal Party, but it was socialist.
Cool.
Maybe he was trying to like sneak that in.
Soften it.
Yeah. Ricardo Flores Magón.
Okay.
They were kind of leaning like anarcho-communist.
Okay. That's right up my alley. So
yeah, so you can you definitely can see that in what we're talking about here with what Zapata was setting up. He ends up getting betrayed and killed in 1919.
Ugh.
Yeah,
it sounded like from the book that like basically this shit started working really well. Like, hey, we got good crops and like we're doing good, and people started trying to get a piece of the pie, basically trying to take over.
After the revolution eventually kind of settles, you have kind of a series of presidents, and then eventually it's something called the Maximato.
Okay.
Where Plutarco Elias Calles was president. His nickname was El Jefe Maximo.
That doesn't sound great.
And so that's where Maximato comes from, because after he left office, he selected like his successors, basically.
Oof.
Okay, so there's like he chooses his successors that he is like directing basically in the background.
Jeez.
Yeah. And Calles picks, after like 3 of these guys, serve their terms or whatever, he ends up picking Lázaro Cárdenas, who he thinks similarly he's just going to direct.
Uh-oh.
But Cárdenas consolidates power real quick and exiles that dude.
That's awesome.
Kicks Caius out and governs for himself. And he's a real like populist leader. He actually does major land reform.
Fuck yeah.
Which is his big deal, is agrarian reform. I think the book talks about the successes there. 67 million hectares are expropriated and given to the people.
Nice.
And he's like Mexico's like radical version of like an FDR style presidency.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
He's cool. And very popular. Really, nobody has anything bad to say about him, pretty much. I'm sure he did some bad shit too.
I'm sure somewhere.
But he kind of does those reforms that everybody was thinking were going to happen at the beginning.
He finally got there.
Yeah, but ultimately Mexico doesn't really take the next step. It doesn't really move towards socialism after those kind of social democratic reforms. And it just, ends up in neoliberal capitalism.
Yeah, that's definitely, yeah. That's kind of what we saw when we were coming up,
Yeah. The pre-party there, it was founded as the National Revolutionary Party, which was in, during the Mexican Revolution and everything. And this is what Cardenas, he consolidated it and made it the party of the Mexican Revolution. And this, eventually becomes the Institutional Revolutionary Party, the PRI. That's supposed to be like a left party. It's supposed to be social democratic, marginally socialist, sort of.
Yeah.
And it's just not.
It's really not. It's a bad one.
It gave in to just complete neoliberalism.
Yeah. Oh, all right. He kind of ends this section with kind of a summary of some more bad stats, basically.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was interesting, he brings this up later too, but this is the first time he brings it up as the U.S. as a comparison. Because, I don't know if you guys knew this, the U.S. also were colonies.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting that they developed so differently, and he posits here that it's because their soil and climate was so similar to Britain that they could kind of do their own thing, because it's you can make your own shit because we don't need it, basically.
Yeah, it was, and this fits into how he earlier laid out his thesis that Latin America, its suffering comes from its abundance. That it's worth so much that people come and take it, is that, the U.S. wasn't worth as much.
Yeah, which is fine, because we get fed the narrative we had such a rich and bountiful land and we learned to tame it. And it's nah, dude, your soil sucks shit.
Yeah, it was, it had its...
Eventually, once it got further west and ate up Mexico shit and stuff, it got better then, but
It had a lot of natural resources. I mean, you're talking, but they're boring natural resources. Fish.
The stuff that England already had.
Yeah. Not exciting stuff.
Like gold.
Wheat. Oh, cool.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not complementary to Britain. It's this, like you said, the same shit that they had. And also the importance of a domestic market with people able to afford to buy things.
Yeah.
Where we have American capitalism developing on the basis of, paid labor. It's not extractive. It's not trying to, make as much shit so we can sell it to the mother country. It's more domestically geared for its own development.
Yeah.
As opposed to in Latin America where it's solely extractive. And all of that extractive nature, really holds Latin America back. Whatever, technological advances, whatever advances of capitalism are made, it just ends up putting more people out of work. It just ends up making them suffer more.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Chapter 3. The invisible sources of power. I've got my summary for the people here.
Okay.
So what you got here? Invisible sources of power. What are these sources? Well, I'll tell you. Basically, a country having been already sucked dry in the previous conquest is now too poor to be able to afford to mine its own resources.
Yeah.
So the U.S. is hungry for metal because they need metal for war.
Yes.
and they need war for metal. It's this horrible cycle. So they come in to mine it, and it gives the country basically scraps and then controls the pricing on it and says, hey, I'm able to buy this raw material really fucking cheap, but you have to buy back my fucking steel ingots or whatever at triple the price.
Yes.
Fuck you, basically.
Yep. That's a good summary.
That's what happens over and over in this one.
Yeah, the main thesis here is that American foreign policy is driven by the need to acquire and secure those supplies of natural resources, which is a crazy, what is it? It's a crazy revelation. It's like a really good peeling back the veil, showing you like, why is America doing all these things? That's why.
Yeah. Cause like, you see all those graphs or whatever, like the pie charts, like here's all of our military budget. It's like most of the circle. And you're like, why? What the fuck are we doing?
Yep.
This is what we're doing.
Yes. And yeah, like you said, countries are too poor to mine their own resources because of that previous exploitation. It's building upon itself, perpetuating itself. And so the U.S. steps in and says, hey, let me help you with that.
Let's make a deal.
Yep.
And if you don't, I'll just take over your country.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a section that this whole book people should read, but this is really informative in terms of seeing why the world works the way it does even today, seeing why America feels the need to intervene in so many places.
Yeah, like if you've heard the phrase military-industrial complex, this book explains it.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't use those words, but that's what this is.
And you're better able to understand when you read the news and you see American interests in the region or destabilizing the region or whatever. You know what they're actually talking about.
They're talking about fucking stealing shit at a dime price and selling it back for way more. It's horrifying.
Yeah, it's crazy. And there's an example of it in Guyana where the CIA, they funded a strike to get a good deal for some company there. The footnote has a lovely example about charity. Let me see. Your favorite thing, charity.
Love it. Love when rich people determine people's fates. It's cool.
The chairman of that company died in 1962, leaving $300 million to charity foundations with the express condition that the money may not be spent outside the United States. Not even through this channel could Guyana recover at least some of its stolen wealth.
Jesus.
This guy was fucking him over from the grave.
Even in death. Some people are still worth more than other people.
Yep.
All right, so I'm just going to list the countries where this happened. Hey, spoiler, it's most of them.
Yeah.
All right, we got Cuba. Obviously facing a lot of embargo situations over there. We've got copper in Chile. We've got tin mining in Bolivia. Iron in Brazil. Petroleum in Mexico, Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina, just Bolivia, Venezuela, basically everybody. Everybody got fucked.
Yes.
This is the summary of this chapter.
Yep.
What were some of the most choice fuckings that you wanted to talk about?
Let's see. One thing I wanted to bring up is the U.S. doing like spy planes, like sending spy planes over Brazil to scan for like deposits, and then the leaders would just sell it to them, and because you could just go in there and tell them like, oh, there's nothing out here, dude. Like, sell me the land cheap.
Yeah, they did like fake reports.
Yeah,
they would like grade it like a C or whatever in terms of minerals and be like, yeah, you don't have anything, just give it to me.
Yeah, I'll take this off your hands because it sucks. But then they'd actually just then roll in there and loot the place.
It's horrifying.
And I was like thinking about this. Okay, so the leaders selling it to them for cheap or whatever, what's their problem? But it's because these leaders, like even their own country, their domestic interest, it's not really their interest. They get by just fine with getting paid this pittance. It's a ton of money. And, they'll be okay. They talk about this crazy this scheme in the Amazon rainforest, where the U.S. was like going through sterilizing people.
Yeah, yeah.
And then looting like nuclear material from the place, like uranium or something. It was crazy.
This is literal supervillain shit.
Yeah, like they're building a like Bond villain base in the Amazon or something.
That should be the next movie, is James Bond versus U.S. imperialism. It'd be a short one because he'd just be like, oh, we're friends.
We just signed a treaty. Everything would be fine.
I can't do anything. Oh, yeah. I liked this quote from the Washington Star in regards to Brazil. Basically, corporation staged a coup because Brazil is trying to sell its iron to Europe, and,
sure,
that's
why
not
not?
going to work out.
Don't do that, yeah.
You can't have that. So the Washington Star said, Here's a situation in which a good, effective, old-style coup by conservative military leaders may well serve the best interests of all the Americas.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, well, one of them.
Yeah. Sure, it helps one America, but
Yeah, it's insane.
that's great. Just call for a coup. Again, that's another, I appreciate their openness, man.
I mean, yeah.
Nowadays, we have to
there's
couch that in all the language and say, we're going to bring some liberty.
Democracy.
Yeah, this guy's an authoritarian, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. Our friend Huey Long shows up in this chapter.
Oh, is this in the Chile thing, or what is it?
Bolivia.
In Bolivia, okay.
Yeah. So he basically exposes Standard Oil of New Jersey for provoking a war in Bolivia and financing the Bolivian army so it could take out the Paraguayan Chaco on its behalf. And he says, these criminals have gone down there and hired their assassins. He called Standard Oil criminal, evil, wicked, domestic assassin, foreign assassin, international conspirator, a gang of rapacious highwaymen and thieves, a bunch of vandals and thieves. He's not wrong.
Yeah, that's true, Huey.
Absolutely true.
Yeah, he's not wrong about that. They were funding the one side of the army. The interesting thing is that I think it was Royal Dutch Shell, which was funding the other side.
Oh my God.
It was a trade war.
Yeah, these wars were just completely from corporations. It's insane.
Yeah. It's
Oh,
wild.
don't worry. Bolivia still got fucked over. They tried to nationalize their oil, and Gulf Oil was like, nah.
No thanks.
Yeah. So, this one, they made a particularly bad deal that I wrote down. So the state only got 11% of the profits, and Gulf Oil would basically recoup 100% of their investment if they explored a region and no oil was found, and then the state would have to cover it.
That's just insane.
That's like me coming to your house and be like, can I make dinner using all of your ingredients? If it's good, then I'll give you a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to eat all of it.
It's crazy.
That's nuts.
There's a good quote. He's talking about the guano trade, the batshit trade. And I think it applies to a lot of natural resources because he says what nature had accumulated over a millennia on the islands was squandered in a few years.
Oh my God.
I think we are seeing that with a lot of natural resources. You had a question here on price fixing.
Yeah. So sometimes he gets into these tales of how this works, and it confuses me. I don't understand how companies can fix prices, I guess is the question.
So it depends. If you're talking domestically, there's usually like laws against colluding, and saying like, oh, we're all going to charge this much for whatever, it's like laws in the United States. You can't do that really.
Whatever.
Officially. Yeah. But
don't believe
essentially controlling the supply and eliminating competition. So think monopolies like OPEC, for example.
Yeah.
Once you control the supply of something, then you can basically control the price of it. Especially if you're talking about like the mercantilist system or something where the businesses are real tied up with the state. And like the government makes a lot of grants monopolies to people and that sort of thing.
Okay.
If you're in charge of how something's made, you can dictate those markets. So you pursue a monopoly, you get control of that resource, and then you can be like, hey, you got to buy it from me, so you're buying my price.
Okay. And then they're extra doing monopoly because they are forcibly taking over these markets.
Well, yeah, and a big part for him, too, is that you have this vertical integration, right? So you can fix the price because you're the only guy who's going to buy it. You can fix the price of the raw materials real low, buy it for real low, and then turn around, make something of it, and sell that for super expensive.
Yeah. There's a ton of examples in here. It's insane.
Yeah. Another thing that goes on is in Chile, the Chile and England battles.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. I skimmed that part.
So really, in that situation, it wasn't really England fighting there. It was it was called the War of the Pacific. It was Chile versus Bolivia and Peru.
Okay, yeah, that's another thing. They keep like turning these countries against each other just for price fixing, it seems like.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the elites of one country turning on the others, yeah.
Jeez.
It was fought over some land with a lot of nitrate fields in it, and while the war was going on, these English speculators, John Thomas North and Robert Harvey, bought up a bunch of that land, the nitrate fields. Suddenly they were really cheap because they were unusable because they were in a war zone. So they bought the bonds that like backed them or whatever. And when the smoke cleared and the war was over, Chile honored the deal and gave them the land.
Wow.
So John Thomas North eventually gets the nickname the Nitrate King, which is stupid, but
isn't that like the shit king? Isn't that what nitrate is?
I think so. Later on, the president of Chile, Jose Manuel Balmaceda, tried to do some like liberal reforms, tried to like nationalize the nitrate, and eventually, runs into opposition. Congress steps in. There's a civil war, and then English speculators come in and start financing the rebels. So that's why it seems like it's an English, war or whatever, is because
they're paying for it.
Yeah, they're funding it. British ships also blockade the ports and go on this campaign of slander in the media against this guy. So they're more like unofficial opponents in the war.
Yeah. Ugh, God.
And of course, it all ends up for nothing because later Germany develops a way to synthesize it. So
they just killed millions of people for no reason.
For no reason, yeah.
Cool job.
Ooh, I wanted to mention the St. John's Night Massacre, the San Juan Massacre in 1967 in Bolivia. That was perpetrated by the president of Bolivia there, Barrientos, who we've mentioned before in our Che Guevara episode.
Oh, I don't remember him.
It was in Bolivia that Che Guevara went on his final mission to die. And one of the reasons the president ordered this killing, 20 people killed, 72 wounded by the army, to crush this miners' organization that they were starting to organize, right? He wanted to crush that because he thought that this was inspired by Che Guevara's presence in the country. He was making sure that no revolutionary uprising was happening.
Yeah. Shit.
Yep.
Quote from a U.S. businessman in Caracas, 1953. Here you have the freedom to do what you like with your money. For me, this freedom is worth more than all political and civil freedoms put together.
Hell yeah.
Cool, I guess. Cool for you.
This is, this is very much at the root of so many people's completely selfish and by D&D definition, evil political philosophy.
Yeah. Freedom to spend.
Yeah, it's what's good for me personally is what's important above everything. Because he's like the civic, all that's actually to the side, right?
Absolutely.
Because if you'll talk to somebody who will say, I'm socially liberal, but I'm fiscally conservative. Not everybody, but there's a good chance that when it really comes down to it, they would agree with this quote.
Absolutely. I think they would. If it's bad for the economy, then shut it down.
Yeah. If they had to choose one, they really care about the economic thing, not really about people's freedoms or anything else.
No, I don't think they actually care.
There are a few exceptions so that sometimes people in that section of the political sphere can be...
You can say libertarians.
Yeah, there's exceptions that they can sometimes be good allies, but most of the time not. Most of the time they're untrustworthy, at least, because while they also don't like the bourgeois state, they are really in it for themselves.
Yeah, they don't understand how that system works together to support itself. You cannot separate those things. That's a fallacy.
Yeah. So I guess one of the big takeaways I have for this section is the impotence of governments against organized capital. Right? We see over and over again, this not all of them are really trying to give in, but they end up getting dominated somehow. There's always some sort of workaround or technique to nullify any attempts to reclaim their natural resources. They can tank prices, they can crush unions, they can start wars, they can depose the leader, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even when it's, this organic thing, like either an election or a peasant kind of uprising, it will be painted as this evil scheme. We got to go restore democracy, I guess. What are you talking about? It's just sinister.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Okay. So where does that leave attempts at reform?
I mean,
what do you do?
I don't know. Cause you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you try to, go 100%, go full socialism, that happens a lot in this chapter. And then guess what? You get thrown over.
Yeah. Yep.
And then if you do reform, like you're too crippled by your economy to actually do good reform.
Yeah.
You're just enslaved by debt.
Yeah. Because it seems like, they can push a little bit, but if they push too far, right, capital just, it shuts down, goes on strike one way or the other, or it just takes you out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what I mean here maybe is that this is a good example of how reform can't really do it. How like you really ultimately have to drive out the capitalists, right? How you have to smash imperialism and build up your own people that way.
I think it's also an argument for global communism because so many times, and we're going to see it later too, you have these countries fighting each other instead of uniting and realizing their common enemy.
Yes, very true.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so we reached the end of part 1 there.
Yeah.
We're going to divide this into 2 parts.
Yes.
Of our episode. Part 2 will cover part 2 and 3.
Oh, look at that.
So, closing thoughts so far?
Man, it's a bummer. It's a bummer. It's infuriating. It is just, it's an upsetting read, but it's an important read. So,
yes.
Yeah.
You got to keep your rage pure, right? And this definitely helps hone that to a sharp edge.
For sure. And I just want to reiterate, we only gave a skimming of these examples. For every one example we gave, there were like 5 more.
Yeah. If you are on the Patreon, you'll see that in the notes is that there's a ton we left out because there's just so much. And it's just example after example, and it just drives the point home that this happened all over the place. And there's a reason.
Yeah. This is not a freak incident. This is a fucking structural pattern and it's designed to work this way.
Yes. Yeah. It's not, oops, we did some imperialism.
Oh, man, that was my bad.
All right. We'll have more substantive conclusions, I think, once we finish part 2. But for the time being, that's where we'll leave the conversation.
All right. Yeah, next time, obviously, we'll be covering part 2. So
yes.
Part 2 and 3 and final thoughts, reviews, all that kind of stuff.
Part 2 is titled Development is a Voyage with More Shipwrecks Than Navigators. Part 3 is 7 years after, which is kind of like an afterword to the book. So,
yeah.
And then we'll sum up and talk about what we liked and didn't like.
Talk about our feelings.
Yeah. Have a therapy session.
I need it. Oh, it's a big one. Okay. All right. In the meantime, you can find us online. We are on Twitter at teachcommunism, Instagram at teachmecommunism. You can send us an email, teachmecommunism@gmail.com. If you want to send us your thoughts on this lovely book, feel free to do that. You can also send episode suggestions for future episodes. You can ask us questions for future listener Q&A. I've been thinking about folding those back into like segments at the end.
We can, yeah. Some of them are, yeah, that would be good for that.
Shorties. You can, and you should, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
Even if you're not an Apple user, it is the best way for people to find the show, from what I know about podcasts at least. So
that's what I hear on podcasts I listen to. So that's what they say.
That's what they say. So yeah, rate and review us. Even if you're not an Apple user, you should still be able to do that. So that would be very nice. Tell a friend about the show. That also works.
Yeah, radicalize your friends.
Just do it. Be annoying.
No, don't be annoying. Be friendly.
Don't be annoying.
I don't know. There's different approaches. I prefer the like kind of soft, gentle, buddy with them on some sort of issue and then kind of like push some other things in there gradually.
I joke around about it a lot until I figure out that they're cool. And then I'm like, hey, let's take it to the next level.
That's a good strategy too.
I'll just be like, capitalism, am I right? And then, yeah.
Your way may be more effective considering the limited time scale we honestly have.
I don't know. Anyway, we're also on YouTube. If you want to find us on there, if that is your preferred listening method, or if you know someone that's their preferred listener method, send them to our YouTube.
Yeah.
We also have a Patreon. That is patreon.com/teachmecommunism. There, for $5 a month, you get access to our notes. We'll be releasing our notes on part 1 for this week.
Yeah.
You can see all the bullets we didn't talk about and how much we skip around. And yeah, both of us have notes this time, so it'll be very robust. And at the end of the year, we were able to give $116 to Feed the People Dallas, which is a local mutual aid fund.
Yeah, solidarity, not charity.
Hell yeah. We're excited to be able to give even more next year. So if you sign up for that, it's not lining our pockets. It is feeding people in Dallas.
Hell yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Cool. We'll be back next time, listeners. So tune in next week for another episode of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session.
Stay forever angry.
Bye, y'all.